Question?
Okay, so I've been focused on work recently, and I find myself working hard and being focused, and the day or even the week, like a few days or a week will go by where I'm not thinking about too much else, and the day goes by and I'm in what seems like an instant, and I'm not thinking about dharma. And so I guess, is this, on one hand, I'm not thinking about much at all, and I'm super focused, which seems like a good thing. But then I'm also, I don't know if I'm lost in it, if that's not a good thing.
It's okay to be lost in something,
Okay.
as long as you're according with your way, right?
Yeah.
Or the way. However, that what you're describing is not unusual in students that are beginning,
Mm-hmm.
because they get lost up, they get caught up in the temporal world, the mundane world, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there's another step that's really quite simple, and that is to have some way of remembering every now and then to turn the light around to like look at your consciousness, as you're, say, for example, speaking with someone else,
Mm-hmm.
or as you're not, but not what where you're truly focused on your work. There's no need or reason to divide your attention.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's other ways that you can set reminders or set visual cues, or you have to be your own coach here and figure out, how can I remember to be aware of what Tolle calls presence, right?
Mm-hmm.
What Spirit calls the I am. Everybody's got a different name for it. But it's basically to recognize when you're getting caught up in some emotion, like when you're practicing patience. So not while you're doing your work. While you're doing your work, your attention should not be divided, and that's
Okay.
good. That's very good.
Okay.
It's good for your work, and it's part of the way. On the other hand, but you have a very particular kind of work, which is like focusing on something that's pretty attention requiring, without
Yeah.
interruption, and also without distraction.
Yeah.
But when you lift your head up from that work, and you go to buy lunch, or when you're so you can remind yourself, now, as I'm doing whatever else I'm doing, I can also be aware that there's two parts to my being. There's this part that kind of does everything automatically. I mean, it might as well be automatic. And it just goes without, I don't have to do anything. It just automatically walks down the stairs, goes out on the street, goes to the vendor and buys this or that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And walks back. And you can do the whole thing while your mind is someplace else. But while you're doing something like that at this stage, right? But you can remember to it's called remembrance, right? And
Mm-hmm.
this is important. To remember what you're doing with your life, remember what your goal is, remember what the true work is, right? So there's work that we do to make a living, there's work that we do to, provide shelter and food.
So in terms of the goal, like, of waking up or according with the way, there's a saying, being in the world but not of it. And then there's the idea that I've seen this in the Buddhist books about, like, the best practice is when you're in the world, not when you're in retreat. And it's important to be established in the world, right? Is that correct?
Correct. And so that's one of the problems that we have with these intensives that people go into. And of course they can escape the world if they're sitting in forced meditation for hours on end in a protected environment that supports only that. And that, I think they're useful in the sense that the people can get familiar with meditation, I suppose, but they're not necessary. And so far better is to practice while you go through your daily life as well. And so, but you said something that I caught my ear, because it was something like, like these were opposed to each other somehow. I don't think that's what you meant.
There's being in
I
the
know what it
world,
is.
but none of it. Is it?
When you talked about the goal.
Yes.
Well, the goal, and what is the goal in Taoism?
To accord with the way.
Yeah, that's the practice. That's the means, and it's the goal.
Mm.
And the thing that they discovered was by so doing, you then attune yourself with something far greater than yourself, far greater than humanity, and now waking up may or may not be the issue because you've gradually walked the way so long that it's the equivalent, effectively. Maybe not all the spills and chills and all the, the excitement and the explosions and the aha moments and all that other stuff, although those will probably be there too. But I'm not sure. Yeah, I can see how, I've never articulated this before, but the goal on the way is to accord with the way, not this big, explosive, dramatic waking up thing, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's actually more practical for most people.
Right. And so I think personally, I feel a need to work hard right now in order to establish myself in the world. I feel like there's a lot of work that needs to be done.
No question that you're absolutely right. There's a huge amount because we're in the middle of a huge transition. If you haven't figured out where you're going, you're just at the mercy of to the extent that anybody can. If you haven't prepared yourself for what's coming, you'll be at the mercy.
It just feels, it feels like there's an extraordinary amount of work needed to prepare.
That's true.
But at the same time, sometimes that gets mixed up with like the desire to be very successful, and that side seems like not beneficial.
There's no success greater than contentment.
Right.
And so, that's part of the culture. See, that's the other thing.
Right.
Is that people don't understand that to a large extent their minds are not even their own minds.
Right.
And this is true much more so than just allegorically. We inhabit a collective consciousness that is actually more us or as much us as anything else. And so, it's a very tenuous and difficult time right now. So now's the time to pay attention. And there's nothing that keeps you before work and after work. And this is, I did this and it really had a major impact on my subsequent life. Practice before work, after work, and during lunch. Because you got to master your own mind. You got to be in charge. Thunder, you don't want lake overtaking thunder.
Yeah.
You want the what is it? The yang of thunder? Is it pretty much yang? Is it, let's see, thunder? No, it's 2 yins over a yang, right?
Thunder is 2 yins over a yang.
Yeah.
But it represents essence.
Okay, so you want essence to rule, not this crazy ass world we're living in with all this conditioned desire and ambition for fame, for example, for money, for the sake of money, and this Instagram society, right? This TikTok culture that is like suicidal, basically, on a societal level. And on an individual level too, unless you are incredible master and have incredible discipline, you're playing with fire with those things.
Yeah, I noticed myself, like, for example, with music, there's like I love making music, and a lot of people listen to my songs and stuff. But it's so easy to get caught up in the whole like chase of fame or whatever, or like
Yeah, and
that sort of.
great artists and great musicians never serve the public.
Yeah.
They serve their art, or they serve God. Bach served God, right?
Yeah.
And if you look at the cathedrals that were built in the Middle Ages and things like that, they're serving something bigger than themselves. And then when you find true artists over a lifetime, they're much more concerned with their relationship to art, which can be truth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a life well lived. An artist is a mystic of the highest order if they're accorded with, I should have said of the highest order, but they are certainly on one of the many different paths that would constitute a way. But they are not trying to please the public. And they're not worried about how many likes their painting's going to get. Or they're just trivial and minor artists. Right. And there's lots of those, and it's something. Maybe it's a living, but it's not nearly the extraordinary richness of searching for truth your entire life, truth in painting, right? Truth in music. Mm-hmm. Because truth and beauty, remember, are just synonyms for truth. Mm. But man, are they hard to get to. And so I mean, ask any painter or ask any musician of any caliber. And so they become slaves of their art. And that's it's a much more demanding master, but it's something that you can have something, you feel like you're doing something worthwhile, and it doesn't just depend on the comings and going of public opinion, which or popularity. Those things are horrible masters. So good. I think you got the idea, and so that's why you have to be careful with this TikTok culture.
Yeah.